All right, so I want to ask you guys a question that's been sort of bouncing around in my head since I got behind the wheel of this redesigned 2025 Chevrolet Equinox. Is there a compact crossover on the market today that's going to leave you sort of feeling overcome with character? Just let that sink in for a second. Now, my honest and true answer is no. Outside of the Subaru Forester and Outback Wilderness versions, I can't really think of one, and the only reason those come to mind is because they're these very capable versions of what are otherwise very normal compact crossovers. So once you get them into conditions where they can really shine, well, that's what they do. But outside of that, they drive like any other crossover in the best ways possible. So I'm not here to criticize the Equinox. I'm not here to set it up. I'm just saying that expectations in this segment should be tempered, and against that backdrop, this thing does what it should do, only better than the last one, and that's what you want to see with a redesigned vehicle. So let's get to some of the details here. Now, the platform is the same as before, but Chevy's people say it is a very evolutionized version of that platform. I guess just kind of a fancy way of saying that they tweaked it a little bit, but it is the same. The same goes with the engine. It's a turbocharged 1.5 liter. It carries over from the previous generation. Importantly, the transmission choices are new this year. Before, it had a 6-speed automatic no matter which drive layout you went with. Now, if you go with the front-wheel drive version of the Equinox, you're getting an automatic continuously variable transmission. And if you go with all-wheel drive like this one I am testing, this is the RS trim, it has an 8-speed automatic. And I will say that 6-speed did feel like it was missing a couple of gears, so it's good to see those added for 2025. Although this is still a very small displacement engine, and it does feel a little strained once you bury your foot into it. Now, it makes 175 horsepower to go with 203 pound-feet of torque with the all-wheel drive layout. If you go with front-wheel drive, you're only getting 184 pound-feet of torque. So that is also something to keep in mind. I haven't driven it yet. I'm going to get into it a little bit later on. It's not that there isn't enough output here, it's just the displacement. It's a small engine, and you can feel it when you bury your foot into the floor. Now, as you've probably picked up on, I'm out here on the highway, which has its pros and its cons. It's not always something that I get to test on these first drive events to see how a vehicle manages on the highway. And I will say it's doing okay. It's cruising along as it should. Just a little bit too much wind and road noise for my taste. Now, keep in mind, this is competing with the Forester as well as the Toyota RAV4, the Honda CR-V, the Nissan Rogue, the Ford Escape. The list goes on and on. This is a very competitive segment. It's also the single most popular segment when you take a look at all the offerings out there as well as all the sales across them. This one is the segment that works for so many different people. And so it's important to have an offering that competes. And the Equinox is competitive, but that wind noise, that is sticking out to me. Now, other than that, this thing is pretty smooth, quiet, and comfortable. I will say it's maybe a little too tippy when you're cornering. I don't really like how much body roll and lean there is, but it's not terrible. There are worse offenders in this segment, so I think this Chevy gets a pass. More importantly, it is spacious. Now, if you look at the spec sheet, it's got less cargo room than the RAV4, but it doesn't really look that way when you take a peek behind the tailgate. Plenty of space for your stuff, and the same goes with the cabin. I feel very comfortable, lots of room up here, although I will say this driver's seat, it sits very high. It's a little bit odd to me. It's as low as it will go, but I just don't feel like I'm in a perfectly comfortable seating position. Now, yes, I am tall, and as you can see, I do have enough headroom even with this massive sunroof, but I just feel like it's a bit of an elevated seating position, again, to my taste. Now, speaking of my tastes, I recently drove the Chevy Blazer EV, which has basically this same Google-based infotainment system, except for one major difference. That does not have Apple CarPlay, and this one does, and it is much better for it. Now, I've seen that Chevy's people have said the reason it went away from it is because it didn't want people using their phones on the road, that it's distracting. And I do agree, although I will say, removing the ability to send text messages just by voice or receive them by having them read out to you over the speakers, that's way less distracting, and it means people aren't going to be reaching for their phones, whereas we've all seen it before in traffic. People are always on their phones, and if they can't have the car do any of that stuff for them, I think they are going to be more likely to reach for them, especially when they're sitting at lights. You guys have seen it, and I have too. Anyways, I am happy to see that this thing has Apple CarPlay as well as Android Auto, but against that Google-based infotainment system that's very good. It integrates Google Maps incredibly well. That's what I'm using out here on the drive from Minnesota across the border into Wisconsin and back, and it's working very well. It worked very well in the Blazer EV as well. It's just not having that Apple CarPlay connection. So seeing that here is very nice. And I gotta say, so is the pricing strategy here. Now, there is no more LS trim. That has been kicked to the curb. The cheapest version of the Equinox is now the LT that you can get with either front-wheel drive or all-wheel drive in Canada. 34 or 36 grand or so before tax. That includes freight. So it's a $2,300 upgrade if you want all-wheel drive. And then there are two other trims to choose from. There is an all-new Active, as well as this RS that I'm driving, both of which are priced right around $43,000 before options and taxes. The options, very few to pick from. You get this sunroof, some paint colors, as well as a package that has stuff like ventilated front seats and heated rear seats. And I like the way that the lineup has been simplified. I also have to say, I cannot think of a better looking crossover in this segment today than the Active trim in this sort of seafoam green with the contrasting white mirror caps and white roof. I absolutely love the way it looks, especially with these all-terrain tires. They really set the whole thing off. I know the whole soft road thing is very popular, but the execution just works so well. And I gotta say the same thing about this interior in the RS. I really like some of the touches in here. You get some contrast red and blue stitching, as well as these very cool details around these vents, as well as across the passenger side of the dashboard. I dig the look. I dig how simple this thing is. It is very commute friendly, as I've been experiencing out here. No, it is not going to set your hair on fire as far as performance or personality, but that's not what it's supposed to do. It is supposed to get you and your family to work, school, play, whatever you have planned in comfort and in style.